These legends are potentially the original Holy Trinity, and when I say Holy Trinity, I'm talking about the supercars back in the day of the 80s and 90s. I picked 3 of my favourites, and to discuss why I think they're so important, I'm going to go back to the 80s and talk about the times that we had, the influence that there was. Kate Bush was singing Running Up That Hill, we had Back to the Future, and a plethora of supercars in this time. Hope you enjoyed the video. The legend that I want to begin with is the Ferrari F40. This needs no introduction because it is inspired and loved by everyone in the car enthusiast world. It was the last car to be commissioned by Enzo Ferrari himself. And the reason I believe this car deserves a spot on the Holy Trinity originals is because this was, for me, and everyone else, pretty much the last Ferrari that Enzo got to see, as well as his almost favourite, most amazing to drive car. Produced from 87 to 92, the 80s were a great time for Ferrari because they made some amazing cars. It was a very, very powerful 2.9 litre engine, which had a V8 twin turbocharged engine. And off the production line, these were really, really successful. They actually made about 1,300 in total, which is a lot if you think about it for a really rare special car. But you still don't really see any, and that's why I feel like this is a car that definitely deserves its place on the Holy Trinity, and a car that I always wanted to make a video on because it's such an iconic car. Now, with the Ferrari, it was designed to celebrate Ferrari's 40th anniversary of the last one approved again by Enzo Ferrari. They also made an LM version as well, which was probably one of the most expensive cars for sale at the time in the 80s. And the 80s were a great time for supercars. This car now is potentially worth anywhere up to £1 million. It's easy to see why. I can see it potentially even being more in the future. They just will never make anything like this again. Off the production line, it was very light, it was very fast, and it was just simple. There wasn't really anything in it. There's no driver aids in this car, and it looked iconic for the time, and still really is iconic, given how it just looks and sits on the road. I looked for prices on these, it's really hard, but here was one for around £900,000. The next car on the list is arguably one of the most important cars from the 80s, even more than the F40, and it is, of course, the Porsche 959. Manufactured by, obviously, the German automobile Porsche, it was a Group B rally car first, and then became a road legal production car with around 300 units potentially out there that we know of. At least 337 plus 8 according to Wikipedia. This car was produced around the same time as the F40 and appeared to be a very direct competitor, having an extremely powerful 2.8 litre twin turbocharged flat 6. You might recall from the F40 had a similar engine. Of course, it was a rally car first, and this is what it looked like. And it's weird that it was a rally car first because it had to compete with big names like Audi and Ford at the time, which were really smashing it in the Group B rally car stage, which is a wilder era. But it also became a beautiful, stunning supercar made for very elite people and was very expensive at the time and still is, which I will show you in a minute, but excellent on track and was amazing. A lot of people doubted this car in rally, but it was an amazing feat to see Porsche destroy rally and haven't, that I know of, gone back since in the same way. It's been an iconic car and one that I've never personally seen before, and I don't usually say that about many cars because I'm able to say that I've seen it go to so many events, but the 959 is still one that I seek to see, and an amazingly good looking car, very iconic look of the 80s. They tried to recreate it in some rendering, but it just doesn't look the same. It does look like a 911 to me personally, and as you can see, the production numbers do say that there was around 337. Hopefully no more will be crashed off the road though, because there's probably less than that at this point. But it's probably a collector's car that will stay in for a very long time. Prices as they go, typically I've seen on a Dubai website, which is the only one I found, was less than £2 million. If you were asked by someone to draw a supercar back in the 1990s, you'd probably draw the Jaguar XJ220, a very iconic looking car that was very late to the party by Jaguar, but in this competition, they were making it from 92 to 94, so still there. Given that they were making these kind of convertibles back in the day, the XJ220 was an absolutely masterpiece of its time and considered an amazing car, but also was a bit of a flop at the same time, which I'll explain in a minute. It was a specialist automotive racing engineering company, Tom Wilkinshaw Racing, which designed and helped collaborate with the car, and had speeds at the time of 212 miles an hour, which was incredibly fast, beating its potential competition. And potentially the rarest car on the list, 282 ever produced. Again, I don't think I've actually seen one, and it'd be amazing to put this one on the list. Customers had to have a £50,000 deposit at the time, and 1,000 people showed genuine interest. But the manufacturing was all there, given that Jaguar did not have the resources. It was a 6.2 litre V12 engine, completely different from its predecessors, which probably gave it its speed. And with that, it had a lot of power. 500 horsepower to be exact, in a car that weighs 1,500 kilograms. The car also went into racing, which a lot of people probably didn't know about, and it did really well, as you can see here. It actually won victories at Le Mans, which was very successful in that time, and definitely was a success and trade to the engineering work that went into Jaguar's racing family, which they'd already had in previous years. So this was even an extra to their trophy cabinet. The car itself was a weird interior, but I really liked it, and it was very unique. It was almost very space age for the time, despite being the 90s. It really did have an aerodynamic body, and I think for that I just absolutely loved the car so much, and it was very iconic for me in racing games when I was growing up. At the time, it cost £470,000, and to be honest, it doesn't look like it's changed too much, staying at that same price, despite being a collector's car. I hope you've enjoyed my original Holy Trinity video. I've really enjoyed making it. Let me know what your favourite car is out of this list, and if you've enjoyed this video, do consider subscribing because I make weekly car content.